Hi guys, welcome to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Kyra, and here on this channel we are all about real makeup for real life and real people. Today, fall is in the air. It is absolutely beautiful here and I couldn't be more excited. And therefore, what a perfect morning to film my top 10 palettes for fall. This year I decided to do 5 older palettes and 5 newer palettes. I do intend to incorporate each of these palettes into my fall content in some way, shape, or form. So if you have any specific requests, let me know on that. As well as I will have some videos coming in terms of favorite complexion products for fall, as well as favorite lip colors for fall. I'm wearing a favorite today, and that is the Fenty Gloss Bomb in the shade Fenty Glow. I love it all year long, but I seem to especially reach for it during the fall. So let's go ahead and start with new palettes, and these are all palettes that were released within the past year, so only going back to September of 2020. I have 2 palettes to start that were both released in October of 2020, and I ended up with both of them, and I find it really interesting. No, I don't. It's ColourPop. So the first one is the ColourPop and the Mandalorian, the Child palette, aka the Baby Yoda palette. I love this palette. If you are into green, but you like to keep it pretty grounded, pretty neutral, nothing too glaring, but you love a little bit of shimmer, a little bit of shine, this is a beautiful palette for that. I love that you have this row over here of neutrals with which to anchor the look. My favorite shades are Firsthand Mando and Sippin' Soup. They are beautiful green shimmer shades. And I just love the texture in here. I love the tones of green that they've included in here. You have a nice deepening shade, a nice transition shade, as well as this really nice crease shade over here. I also think any of these 3 matte greens would be beautiful 1 shadow looks. I think this has a wealth of 2 shadow looks to offer, so if you like to get things done in a hurry, I also recommend this one to you. And also released in October of 2020 was the That's Taupe palette from ColourPop, and this is my cool tone dream. But the thing I love about this is even though it's a taupe focused palette, you have some really nice shades that air on different edges of taupe. So this shade Python up here, which I just know I could pan, it's a little bit more of a rosy tone, and then this shade down at the bottom called Constrictor actually has somewhat of a green tone to it, which is really interesting, and I just love that it's very surprising in that way. You do have 5 mattes and 4 shimmers in this palette, and one of those shimmers is a Super Shock shadow formula. This one is called Slated, and then my other favorite metallic is the shade next to it called Snake Eyes, but you can just see the gleam and the glow. Any of these palettes that I have dedicated videos to, I will link along with the palettes down in the description box in case you're curious if you have these palettes, if you're looking for some fresh inspiration for the fall season. I also really like this palette because I feel like it will carry me into the winter really beautifully as well. Going back to Black Friday of 2020, the most colorful Natasha Denona palette that I own is the Trio Chrome, and I 100% bought this palette for the mattes. Specifically, the shade Garmin is just my type of shade. It's like one of the shades that I have on my eyes today. I'm not wearing any of these palettes, unfortunately, because I am in the middle of 1 month, 1 palette, with the BH Cosmetics Avocado Toast palette combined with my Project Pan eyeshadows. I also love this variety of greens. Now, greens are good for any season for me, but I especially love to get into the more grungy side of green during the fall, and this shade over here can help me do that, as well as the Trio Chrome in the center. But also, who doesn't like a pop of chartreuse during the fall? I have a beautiful chartreuse like cropped hoodie that is so cute that I definitely want to pair with this shade over here. The Trio Chromes are absolutely smooth and buttery, and they are definitely something special. I mean, I just don't think it's going to pick up on camera how stunning these are. And I especially like the one called Color Flip here for fall. It is the one on top here, and it kind of, I don't know, it's got like peachy purple, definitely like a taupe. I don't know, it's some kind of magic. And of course, you can wear whatever you want whenever you want. These are just some of the palettes I'm most looking forward to using, that I immediately think of when I think of, you know, products that I want to focus on for fall. So Trio Chrome, while she's expensive, she was worth every penny to me. And then our last ColourPop palette for today, I think that it is so disappointing that while this was released in the last year, it's already discontinued. And yes, ColourPop does that, but this is such a beautiful palette, and specifically for fall, for my preferences, it's the ColourPop and Raw Beauty Kristi at Forest Sight palette. This is such a beautiful jewel toned palette, and where the palette really shines is in the matte shadows. I absolutely adore the tones in here. There's definitely options to take this to a more neutral side of things. In all honesty, this is my token jewel tone palette currently in my collection, where it just gives a beautiful array of those beautiful jewel tone colors. I don't feel like the shimmers are what actually shines in this palette. It's definitely the mattes. I love the shade Puffball. It's like that perfect pukey, mustardy, almost olive color for the fall, as well as I think this Amanita shade over here is just the most beautiful like aubergine shade. It's like burgundy, but it's also purple or plum, and I just love that kind of tone. And yes, I did buy the Natasha Denona Retro palette, which is full of those type of tones. So I love this palette over and again, and I'm really sad that they've already discontinued this. What are you doing with your life, ColourPop? I can hear my chickens. It's so beautiful outside today, but I had to close my window in my office, which is actually on the front of the house, because my chickens at the back of the house are laying eggs like crazy, and they're very loud and very opinionated when they're laying their eggs. They gotta let the whole neighborhood know. So thanks a lot, chickens. And then last for the newer palettes, and this might be a little bit controversial, I think, because some people really loved this palette like myself, and some people really didn't. And this was released just in May of 2021, and my hubby picked it up as a souvenir for me when we were in Vegas recently, and I went shopping at the Sephora at the Venetian, and that is the Natasha Denona Zendo palette. I really enjoy this. In fact, I personally was not going to pick this up, but some standout shades to me, definitely this cream to powder shade that is like a beautiful mint green. I think this makes a beautiful matte inner corner highlight, inner lid highlight. My favorite look that I did with this palette was using these two greens right here, and I believe I layered this duochrome called Uoma, which is also extremely stunning. It has a little bit of a green tinge that has sort of a sheer warm base to it, but I just feel like with the kiss of teal and green, the rest of this is a beautiful, warm, fall-toned palette. You know, you've got your beautiful cream to powder brown up here, which is super duper warm, called Mindful. I mean, this is a warm brown if I ever saw one, as you can see it right there, but it's so rich and like milk chocolatey, which I love. And I really wanted to give you something new and fresh to be inspired by this fall. All right, let's go back to palettes that are older than September of 2020. The oldest of my old palettes again falls into that beautiful jewel tone color story. In fact, I think this would pair beautifully with the Raw Beauty Kristi palette from ColourPop. Let me know if you want a video on that. But it is my Persona Identity 2 palette. You guys hear me rave about the Persona Identity palette all the time, but this is one that I really mostly reach for in the fall as well as into the holiday season. I love the sort of primary aspect to this palette. You have your very primary yellow, very primary green, purple, etc. But I think this pairs beautifully with other palettes. You can really anchor the look or the lid or however you want to do it with some of these jewel tones, and then just light it up with a nice little glitter or a shimmer that's going to give you a little bit more sparkle. My two favorite shades in this palette for deeper shades are these up here, and then I also really love this peachy number down here. Possibly the most beautiful raspberry shade on earth, called Empowered. This rich, I mean, just it's thick and rich and just so yummy. This brown shade called Resilient, and then this nice peachy number, which I like to layer over actually either one of these shades, but I also love it as an inner corner or just a lid, like a highlighting lid shade, is called Honest. I love this palette. If you do have the original Persona Identity palette, I highly recommend trying to combine it with this one because I feel like they were MFEO, made for each other. Moving into March of 2020, our eyes were opened, and it was opened to the glory of the e.l.f. bite-size eyeshadow palettes, or quads. And this particular one, I think you probably saw this coming if you've been on my channel for any amount of time, but this is the Pumpkin Pie Quad. I recently hit pan in this beautiful bronze shade. One of my favorite bronzes in my collection, as I always mention, but there's just something so beautiful about these shades. They're foiled, they are just yummy. Specifically the bronze shade, I think it has a nice sort of golden shift to it. The copper is beautiful as well. I like the versatility of looks that you can get with this little quad with just 4 shades. Whatever tickles your pickle, right? Like, whatever you like for fall, I think you would like this formula, and for how inexpensive they are, you really can't go wrong. And I guess this one is just as old as Persona Identity 2. I got a little out of order here, but hey, it is a Monday after all. This palette was released in August of 2019. I'm talking about the AVH and Jackie Aina palette. I still think that this goes down in history as my favorite AVH packaging of all time. It feels more heavy and luxe than their Dirty Carpet packaging or some of their other palettes, but this is beautiful. Now, I'm not a big pink or red on the eyes person, so if you take out those 2 shadows right there, this is my perfect fall palette. I love the purples that are offered in here. I like that you have a little bit of cool tone popping in as well. This shade Zam right here is just the most beautiful. I really wanted to put this on my lid today. I should have just done it, but it's just so beautiful. It's glitter. Look at that. It's like messing with my camera. It's so beautiful. It's an absolutely gorgeous topping glittery shade. I do love the mattes that you have to offer in here. You've got a beautiful raspberry, a purple. This brown up here is very plummy, which is so my jam when it comes to a deep dark brown. Love this shade, love this terracotta shade even more. My two shimmers are definitely Lituation and Sponsored. Lituation is such an interesting shade, and I don't think it was really a favorite in this palette for a lot of people, but for me, I was like semi-obsessed with that shade. And Sponsored is, well, it doesn't appear to be super unique. It's a brown green, kind of like a blue brown, but it's a green brown. Look at that. It's so pretty. I just absolutely love this shade. And then here's Lituation up here. It's definitely taupey, but with sort of a soft, like almost like a grayed out purple, like my headband today, which, by the way, what do you think? Is it a little juvenile? I can't decide. Probably the most recognizably fall palette that I own is the Natasha Denona Metropolis palette. This released in September of 2019, and it is still available because I just actually picked mine up recently. One of my favorite things about this palette are all the cream to powder shadows in here. It's just a texture that I really love. It's very watercolor-esque, but can definitely pack a punch as well. I love the tones in here. I love the inclusion of a little bit of a rose gold. I love the inclusion of this lighter sort of highlighting lid shade. You've got duochrome, toppery type stuff going on in here. Oliver's having himself a heyday barking out the window down there on Repup. But yeah, these are really beautiful shades. This is not a new palette. Again, it's an older one. The Alter Ego Artemis palette is a very good option. Is it as good as this? No. Is it as pigmented as this? Not in the cream to powder shadows necessarily, but it's an overall beautiful palette for fall. So if this one, it makes you run and hide, I definitely recommend checking out Alter Ego. And lastly, I actually thought this palette had been removed from the Ulta site. I somehow got the thought in my mind that this palette had been discontinued, but it hasn't. So I'm going to sing its praises today, and I cannot wait to use it this fall some more. And that is Juvia's Place, the Nomad palette. This is me in the fall. These are my colors. This is my jam. I don't love this Big Bird yellow shade up here that has like a fair amount of glitter in it. The rest of the shades I would absolutely use. I just love these tones. And these shimmers in here are two of my favorite shimmers for fall, period. First of all, you have this very dark, sort of murky green, and then the most beautiful lid shade of all time. This shade, it looks like liquid metal. I think it's absolutely stunning. It goes with every single tone in this palette, even the Big Bird yellow. But this green, while it is a shimmer, it's more like a satin to me. There is some reflect there, but more just a smoothness. And like I said, this is sort of like a blackened army green, which I just find absolutely gorgeous, especially for outer corner work, or if you want like a deep smudgy liner. This would be gorgeous for that. But let me know down below, what are some of your favorite palettes that you cannot wait to pull out for fall? Have you pulled them out already, or are you holding off? If you saw any palettes that pique your interest, whether they're something you're considering purchasing or something you already own, something you want to shop your stash for, let me know down below. I'm happy to do specific videos with specific palettes if you like. And thank you so much for hanging out with me today. If you enjoyed today's video, I would really appreciate it if you would give it a thumbs up. And if you like me, go ahead and hit that subscribe button too, because I'm here for you 3 days a week. And I'd really like to see you back here for the next video. And with all of that said, I hope all of your makeup days are absolutely beautiful makeup days.